The Bookshelf with me, Ryan Tubridy, is brought to you by Eason, Ireland's favourite bookseller. And Eason have a rich heritage of bookselling since 1886. It's probably where you got your first ever book, or maybe your last one, and hopefully your next one after you listen to this episode of our podcast. Stay listening for Ryan Recommends, my weekly recommendation, where I'll discuss a book I've read recently that I think you'll really enjoy too. And I'm very excited to let you know that Eason are running a promotion on children's books for a limited time only. Pop into your local Eason store and pick any two kids or teen or young adult books and get the cheapest one half price. So see in store for details. They're the ones with the purple stickers. Eason. Be inspired. Welcome to The Bookshelf with me, Ryan Tubridy, and our guest today, I'm not going to get into a big introduction. He is the Taoiseach, or to our foreign guests and listeners, he is the Prime Minister of our country, Taoiseach meaning chief, and he is our Taoiseach. Currently, he is Micheál Martin, a TD for Cork, and he joins us today. You're welcome, Taoiseach, and thanks for being here today.
Great to be here, Ryan. Really thrilled to be here with you.
I've known you for a few years at a distance. We're not friends per se. I say that respectfully, you know.
Yes, of course.
But I've always struck by the fact that I think you're a history guy. And I mean that in the sense that, you know, you're not a historian as such, but you love your history.
Yeah, I studied history and I did a master's degree in history in the formation of the Irish party political system, 1918 to 1932, with a particular emphasis on Cork. Now, there you are for a thesis, all right?
You've learnt that off.
But then we wrote a book then on that called Freedom to Choose, based on the thesis. Some academics said that's worth a book. And so I have a love of history and it's curiosity about history. And I taught history for about 5 to 6 years.
To what age group?
To leaving certificates, junior certificates. And I loved it, and always endeavouring to try and get behind the moment or the events. So everyone's kind of fixated with an event, Waterloo or 1916 or whatever, but a historian always wants to sort of give the context of the time. Yeah. And I was always intrigued as well by what was going on in people's lives.
Yes.
Like I was in Moore Street today. It was very interesting because the OPW have very exciting plans for 14 to 17 Moore Street, where the leaders of 1916 surrendered. But apparently they were saying, as Pearse was looking out the window and saw civilians being killed, because civilians were fleeing Moore Street, he suddenly, that's the moment when he's thinking of surrender.
Right. The effect on the people.
Yeah, and the OPW people said, we want this to relive this, so that when you look out this window, when it's an interpretive centre, whatever it is, you're seeing people go about their lives. Yeah. So I've always fascinated by, we all learn about the big political events, but what was life like?
What you might call social history, essentially.
Exactly,
in some ways, When we did the show, Who Do You Think You Are? They brought me up O'Connell Street and said, there's Burger King. And I said, I know Burger King probably too well. And they said, look up, like all great history teachers will tell their students, look up and see the beautiful architecture. But there was a window, surely enough, above it. He said, that's where your grandfather, Todd Andrews, was shooting guns back in the day. So suddenly the Burger King became a very different building.
I used some great quotes from him in a speech some time ago. It was in UCD, I think. Yeah. I think we deliberately used it in UCD. Yeah. But in one of these, during the decades of centenary.
Yes.
Because he was very critical of the academics and all these people taking over the revolution.
Yes.
Actually. Yes. From the rank and file.
Yes.
You know, as we move into the treaty space. And all that,
You know, well, he didn't suffer fools anyway.
No, he didn't.
But that's for another podcast another day.
It is, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about life in Cork as a young lad yourself. I mean, was it a house with books or magazines, or was it academic, or how was it?
It was, I mean, my father was Terrace House in Turner's Cross, Con 11. My father was a bus driver, and that he was very educated, very interested in us getting an education. Yeah. And so was my mother. So I always remember the first. We had the Encyclopedia, Britannica Encyclopedia, and he'd ask us to read that. And then there was another sort of book of blue books of novels, Charles Dickens and all that. So I think this was my father's attempt to sort of bring books into the thing. Yeah. He was a tour driver with CIE, so he learned he had books, the history of Ireland, so because he used to give talks on the bus. Yes. You get more tips from the Americans the more folklore you had and all the rest of it. But really it was my Uncle Buddy, my mother's brother, who was a big influence on me in terms of books, because he left as a single man. I think his love life didn't work out or something like that, and he ended up in the Royal Albert Hall. And he was a tremendous self-taught man, loved opera and loved books. And I would get he'd send over to me tranche of books, especially as a teenager in my late teens. I remember he sent me The Borstal Boy. He sent like 20 books on one stage. There was A Sealed Train. It was a great book about Lenin's trip from Zurich to Russia.
Fascinating. How old were you getting these tranches of books?
15, 14, 15, 16.
Critical age.
Yeah, and he's bringing these exotic kind of books for me. I mean, I was in Blyton in my childhood years.
Yeah.
Famous Five, the mystery series, Fatty and all them, and they're solving all the problems. I was so wrapped up in them. I remember one time myself trying to put the sheet of paper that he put onto the door to unlock the door. The key would come and you pull it back. I could never do it.
You were trying.
I could never do it.
Your early days as a petty thief.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't work out.
Didn't work out. There's a few places I want to go here after what you've just said. So let's go back to Enid Blyton and all of those sort of days. Were you library goer all the time?
Yeah.
And how many of you were siblings-wise?
Five.
Five of you in total?
Yeah. One of my great regrets in life, I wanted to be a writer.
Did you?
Like, not a politician at all, yeah. And I went into UCC, I did English, history, Irish.
And what did you want to write?
I don't know, I just wanted to be a writer.
But did you want to write fiction, non-fiction?
Fiction, yeah.
And what was appealing to you in the fiction world?
Well, when I was in school, I was good at short stories, and I'd come home and the mother would say, would you read? A couple of aunties would be in there and I'd have to read my short story. And they'd all be thrilled reading it and so on like that. And I was kind of good at second level in writing.
And can you remember any of the sort of themes that you're...
Not
or is
so
that
much.
too far away?
It's too far away now at this stage. I remember I would do 2 essays a night. Paddy, my brother, would go and meet 4 other friends to sort out the maths, because we were not... Paddy was good at maths. I wasn't as good at maths. Burnsy, the teacher, Liam, was a great character, neighbour of mine now. You had to have it right for him the following day. So I'd say to Paddy, okay, I'll do your essay, and I'll do my essay, and you just get that maths puzzle.
So you delegated.
Worked out very well, except I got caught one day by Liam Burns when he kind of said, and he had a great Cork accent, like, how did you get from dear now to dear Martin? I tried to mumble something. And how did you get from there to there? And the face was obviously going red, beetroot, and then he'd say, Martin, you were cogging by, you were cogging. Friendly.
He was on to
me, yeah.
But I'm trying to figure out the novel that you were interested. Like, did you want to? Who would you have modelled yourself? Were you like Steinbeck from America? You mentioned being from Ireland, or where were you going?
You could be in that Steinbeck mode, or I suppose. I mean, I didn't have a particular genre at the time. I just had this sense: could I become a writer? Yeah. I foolishly and naively thought doing English in UCC, starting out, would be the catalyst, or would enable me to.
Yes.
And probably hadn't great self-confidence either.
Okay.
I found first English overwhelming because there was books coming at me left, Old English versus sort of
Chaucer
Middle English,
and all that stuff.
And then I always remember getting 3 O'Casey plays in Easter to have done in 6 weeks' time, kind of thing. I said, Jesus,
nearly put you off.
It did actually, to a certain extent.
I can understand
I ended up doing Irish and history then, and like Irish was fine, but I had that regret, and I often said, whenever I give up politics or whatever, I go back and finish that English degree, but time is running out.
Maybe write the book, you know.
I'd love to dabble at it at some stage.
I bet it's in there somewhere, and we'll come back to that in a minute. But you were reading Enid Blyton. You were reading what else were you reading as a kid, as a pre-12-year-old?
Well, the Biggles, remember Biggles? Yeah.
This is
adventure stories.
A lot of guests in your age group. And I say that again. Do we share what age? It's obviously very public.
Everybody knows. I'm 64.
Okay. How old do you feel?
Oh, I feel 45.
That's more like it. So everyone in your age group, right?
Yeah.
Which is about 13 years on me. So that's why we're kind of similar, but not the same.
Diplomatically put, right?
Thanks so much. I feel a calling. Have things like but it's very Biggles.
Yeah.
A lot of Enid Blyton, that kind of so English for children's books.
Very true. Yeah,
and I think it's changed now for children's writing. A lot of Irish writers, and that's great. But it's so English, given the Republican nature of our history in school, our upbringing, our newspapers, and so forth. This dichotomy, this paradox, if you want to call it.
But that kind of sums up Ireland in many ways.
Go on.
My grandmother was a firebrand, common man woman, who my late mother often says, that's the reason you're in politics. Like, she was the matriarch. She died when my grandmother, and I was 2 years of age when she died. But my mother told me she loved watching a royal wedding or whatever at the same time. And I was scratching my head here. I thought, because she was fairly kind of full on now.
She was, so you cut her, she bleeds green.
Yeah, absolutely. And yet would watch a royal wedding or whatever, kind of fascinated by it, you know.
William and Kate got married 100 years ago, and I called into my mother, right, daughter of Todd Andrews. So you're talking like your grandmother, green as you can be. I called in and said, I wonder where she is. The curtains are closed. There's no one around. I knock on the door, nothing. So I said, I hope she's okay. Open the door. 5 of them. Wine, Prosecco, the whole TV, the wedding on. I said, if your father could see you now. But there you were as a kid, and you're reading all these great adventure books, and you're going to the library. I'm intrigued by your dad, who's driving the bus and telling the story. Anyone who drives a bus and tells a story is a good old, either they're a great spoof or they're great fun, because they're interested in life. But he didn't go to college. He didn't.
He left school at 12.
Right. So he didn't have much of an education to speak of, but clearly had a hunger.
A huge hunger. The teacher tried his best to keep him in school. But his father had died. His mother had died.
Breadwinner. And
there was nothing left there. And and the 17-year-old sister keeping them all together. He had an older brother, went to fight in the British Army, was captured in Singapore and spent 3 years in a prisoner of war camp in Changi prison. The other brother, stepbrother, because the mother had married twice. Her first husband was killed in World War I. And Jackie was in India, and Dick was a young, I think 12 or 10 years of age, and Maura was minding him. And so I always remember meeting his sister afterwards saying, you know, I did everything to prevent ourselves being caught by the cruelty man. That was her fear. The cruelty man at the time, for people who may not know, was the person who rounded you up as kids and felt you couldn't stay where you were and sent you into an industrial school.
What a name. What a frightening name. The cruelty man.
The cruelty man was kind of the forerunner of the ISPCC kind of thing at the time. This is well documented, all of that.
I understand that, yeah. So they
were very working class, north side of Cork.
And were you, and now this might sound strange, but did you love your parents?
Absolutely,
It wasn't very loving, if you know what I mean.
Very loving.
It wasn't Victorian.
No.
No.
I mean, it was very funny. I mean, my dad was my hero, like, essentially. Yeah. And to this day, I kind of still think of his sayings, his judgments. My mother was a beautiful mother in the sense that she baked a lot. Yeah. I mean, the memories, I always remember in November, you're kind of running in the door from school excitedly. School's around the corner. Mm-hmm. And the oven wasn't the best. Yeah. But the big paranoia, and we'd forget, of course, don't bang the door, the cake will sink and there will a roar come from the kitchen, because the porter cake could have been in and the sultana is next and the puddings and and it was a lovely house that way. And then, like, in the summer, the father worked in CE, so you get a few passes for the train down to Youghal, and Youghal was a big thing for us in the 60s.
Lovely seaside venue.
Yeah, and like, think about it, that time every family had 5 plus.
No.
And some had 10. So all the mothers of Turner's Cross are going down with loads of kids hanging off them onto the train down to Youghal, and my mother would have made maybe 40 to 50 egg and tomato sandwiches, custard slices, apple tarts, and it was a wonderful day.
Actually sounds really good.
It was absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, and delicious.
And delicious, and with a great crack. So it was a happy childhood, I have to say.
Sounds good. I love that. Your first book, we're going to ask you, Taoiseach, is for the book from your childhood. Is there one that you can pick out and say this is the one that really...
That one particular. I mean, it's that Enid Blyton series.
Okay.
Watership Down was a particular, but it's probably later on.
Richard Adams, I think, The
one great book, it is a great book. Yeah. That kind of later on in life, I think, suddenly, a book can really make you think and knock you out of your comfort zones.
Yes.
James Joyce's Portrait of an Artist, Portrait as a Young Man, which we had on the curriculum in first year in English.
Oh, first year. So you would have been, what, 12 or 13?
No, sorry, first year in university.
Oh, sorry, I was as a kid.
Ahead. As a kid, I'm not clear there's a book that...
But I think we'll go with Enid Blyton's
Enid Blyton is the canon, yeah.
Okay, we'll go with that for the moment, because I think that's probably a fair, without particularly saying Famous Five or Secret Seven. But do you still read... do you like what sort of books do you like to read when you're traveling around the world, or trying to relax and get away from?
Some novels. The great writer, I think, has had a big impact on me, is Colin McCann.
Oh yeah.
Let the Great World Spin. It's just a marvelous book.
And Transatlantic, which was another beauty.
Another great beauty.
Yeah.
No, the other one is A Paragon.
Oh,
which, if you want to understand the Middle East, go and read it. Yeah. And when I was Foreign Affairs Minister over the last 3 or 4 years, I mean, my officials I said, look, get them that book, will you? To the Belgian Foreign Minister, have you read A Paragon? I'd said to all.
So you gave this as a gift to people?
Yeah.
It's a great gift.
You've got to read this because this gives you the full... And he invites the reader to form their own opinion. And then there's a whole lot of other stories going on.
This comes back to what you were saying at the beginning of our chat, which was that Paragon, it really deals with two families who've been greatly affected from both sides of the argument in the Middle East. So you've got a Palestinian family and obviously a Jewish family from Israel.
You've got Rami and Bazam.
Lovely.
Right? Yeah.
And what it does is it does exactly what got you interested in history at the beginning was, yes, it's the conflict, but yes, it's the human story.
Yes.
On both sides. It's very moving.
Both lost daughters. And I tell you a wonderful sequel to it.
Please.
That I got to meet Rami and Bazam.
How?
In Israel when I visited
the two central characters on either side.
Characters, and they had two other people with them in Puritan Circle that they formed. Now I couldn't believe. I just said to the ambassador, any chance you could track down Bazam and Rami, because it's kind of a hybrid novel which uses real life people and their experiences. They both lost young daughters, one to the IDF and one to a jihadist bomb in Jerusalem, and I did, and they were wonderful people.
Yeah,
and they were so. I mean, it's kind of reflective of the North as well, in the sense of the search for reconciliation. How do we live side by side?
This is it. What did you learn from your meeting with the two men?
First of all, in terms of the novel itself, it's very real. I mean, there is a chemistry between them that's absolutely wonderful to behold. I mean, they slag each other, they have jokes and so on like that. There's an element of despair that they're finding in Israel at the moment. For example, they visited schools and certain elements are going on to the school principal or the education department saying these people should not be allowed into our schools. Mm-hmm. All they're preaching is reconciliation and how Arab and Jew can live alongside each other. Okay. But it's a sign of how difficult and challenging that whole scene is. This is before October the 7th and that atrocity and the horrible war. But in a way, though, there's the hope of humankind in those two people. Yeah. And then there was two others we met. Roberta, South African mother who lost her son to Palestinians, and a young woman whose baby, a 6-month-old child, died for want of getting to the hospital. Was stopped at a security checkpoint and wasn't allowed through. Yes. But these are people who've been through terrible trauma and loss, and yet have within them that fundamental act of forgiveness. And how can we build a better future? But it's very rare that you get two main characters in a book and you actually get a chance to meet them.
Yeah, I'd say that was quite something. Very moving. Paragon is the name of that book, and that is a bit of a life changer of a book.
It is. Yeah,
we do ask you about the book that changed your life. Do you want to suggest one to us? Or?
Well, The Portrait of an Artist I was suggesting, but
that's where we're going. Yes,
because I think that one. Yeah, that's the one.
James Joyce. So you were first year in college, so that's quite a formative time too.
It is. You see, it's exactly that, and he's the undergraduate. But it's kind of I'm the nationalist going into UCC. I see life and. You know, I grew up in a sort of Catholic family and that, and suddenly this guy is saying, I want to escape all of this. Yeah. I want to escape the nets, I think he calls them, of nationalism, religion, and so on. Yeah. And you're kind of saying, this is really provoking you to think, and it's taking you out of your provincialism.
As the best art should.
As it should.
Yeah.
And I think if I remember, his father went with him to the Derry Science Building in UCC, where I think the father spent time.
Yes.
Joyce's father.
Yes.
So that book did have an impact on me.
Yes.
At that time.
Was your mum very proud of you going to college? And
oh, she was, yeah. She loved it.
Meant a lot?
Meant a lot to them, yeah. We were the first, I was the first to come out of university.
Okay.
And Paddy, my brother, as well, yeah.
You made it through to the other
We made
end.
it through. I always remember, there's a lovely kind of poignant photograph. I think it's poignant looking back on it on graduation day, because we wouldn't have had any experience of graduation day.
In the family? In
the family around like that. But the two of them are there outside the Hona Chapel with myself, and it's kind of speaks of an age.
Wow.
Speaks of...
This is your mum and dad?
My mum and dad, yeah. And my dad was really happy that day because we met a lot of people around the place, because he was well known himself from his boxing exploits and all of that, you know.
Because he had been, if you'd explain to people your dad's boxing exploits.
Yeah, he boxed with Ireland, and was back in the 1950s, boxing was huge in Cork. I mean, working people would leave their workplace on a Friday. There was a tournament almost every Friday night.
And your dad, big guy, obviously.
Big guy, light heavyweight. Had some great fights. He beat a fella called Bygres. There's a great series in the Evening Echo recently. They discovered the actual paper clipping. 3,000 people allegedly in City Hall in Cork. Lots can't get in. And he beats this guy who becomes British Empire heavyweight champion afterwards. And when I went canvassing, I'd knock on doors and people would say, you know, are you the champ's son? Yeah. And I'd have my college student coming out of college with my policy.
Yes.
I'm not really interested in my policy.
Yeah.
Are you the champ's son? I was there the night he beat Bygres.
Oh, welcome to the Irish election process.
Exactly.
Yeah, champ's son number one.
I ran home and I said, listen, we've got to change the card. Son off. I did.
Did you?
So I did. Son off, Micheál Martin, international boxer. Put that on the line, lads. That is the connection here.
Son of the champ.
And forget about everything. And he drives the number 3 bus.
Which you've all been on. Safely. Safe travels. So here's this week's Ryan Recommends, brought to you by Eason, Ireland's favourite bookseller. I'm going to go with one of my all-time favourites, Anthony Horowitz and Marble Hall Murders. This features his famous fictional detective Atticus Pun. So if you've read the first two books, Magpie Murders and Moonflower Murders, you'll be very happy to know here's the third in the trilogy. I don't know if there's more to come, but they are concentrating on what's called as Atticus Pun's last case, so we'll see. Like the previous books, you've got a book within a book set in the 50s, in a book set in the 21st century. Quite hard to explain, but let me tell you, it looks big, it looks maybe intimidatingly big, but once you get into it, it's gorgeous. It's old school. You could call it cozy crime, but it's more crime, less cozy. It's a beautiful read. Just believe me. Get the first one, go for the second one. You're in for a treat. Loved it. Highly recommend it. And let's get back to the chat. How did you meet Mary?
I met Mary in college.
And what was she studying?
Geography and history.
So how did the
geography was her big thing? Yeah.
How did your worlds collide?
Fianna Fáil, actually.
There you go.
She joined.
We're all great love stories start. And end.
She joined the Fianna Fáil Common when I was in second year, I think, or third year. Yeah, and she was a great organizer and administrator and all that kind of thing. And we kind of, as usual, great friends. And I always remember tell the story when son as well at the 21st birthday party. Our first kind of kiss, and Mary says, "Oh God, we were such great friends," you know.
That's destroyed.
The usual thing.
Yeah.
But that's how we met in college. Yeah. And I think UCC for both of us has a particular resonance and fondness where, we'd be in love with UCC. We got engaged there and we kind of went back to UCC to do the engagement
you really were.
in the President's Garden. And then you get married there if you're, the whole in Chapel, and we did all that.
And where'd you go on honeymoon?
That's another story.
Go on.
Mary had an idea of visiting big houses of Ireland. So we got to Longville. It was a great idea and a great concept. But then I'm on the BME in Doolin, and I said, Mary, this isn't exactly a big house for Ireland. Then I'm on a B&B in the Aran Islands. And then I got a phone call because Dáil is still going on, because no one expected a general election in 1989.
Oh, okay.
And we got engaged in 89 and then got married in 1990. So there was a general election in 89 and I got elected.
Yeah.
I wasn't expected to, but I do. And then I can't really go on a honeymoon, but I'm told, okay, take a chance. And Charlie McCreevy and some of the Hardshaws who'd take an odd chance and missing a vote or whatever, if they ring you to say you must get back, you must get back. And those people rang me to say, the Dáil had collapsed over a broadcasting thing. You have to come back. So the honeymoon was broken up after 4 days. Wow. And we're back in Leinster House, myself and Mary. No, she knew the political scene. She had been involved in Ogre Fianna Fáil and all the rest of it. And then we went off to Wicklow, to Derry Bawn House. Yeah. And Mary's sister joins us, who comes back from Australia. So the three of us are in Derry Bawn House. I don't know if it still exists. It was a very funny scene, because it's like a scene from Murder, She Wrote. I was kind of saying to John, someone's going to get killed here, you know? There's about 8 or 10 of us around the table. And the man insisted that all guests must eat together. Yeah. And then there was a wife of an American film producer. He was producing in Dublin. And it was a German couple. I always remember Joan saying, don't mention the war, whatever you know, because I have a habit of blurting things out.
So we're going to have a Fawlty Towers moment.
No, you're not going to believe you're not going to believe it. I did start talking about the war.
So, how did that go down?
Fine. I think Joan just gave me a grin, a grimace.
And so what did I tell you?
What did I tell you?
Fawlty Towers. As you're talking,
which is one of my great favourites.
Well, I mean, it is one of the.
But I can't stand all this kind of stuff that you have to change it now for modern sensitivities and sensibilities. I don't get that at all.
No,
as a historian in me, you got to allow the contemporary stuff. You got to allow. I mean, how do you know what the morals of a given era were if you don't allow it in all its unvarnished truth?
It's like they've changed now the Roald Dahl books, where I think you can get 2 copies of it. Yeah. One is as it was, and one is for sensitive souls.
Yeah, that offends me a bit. I believe in authenticity, and it has to be as it is. You know?
And what about pulling down statues?
I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah,
that's terrible.
Because they belong to
an era, and they teach. Like I used to bring kids on tours of Cork City.
Did you?
Yeah, as a history teacher.
So you brought them out. I love that.
When springtime is summer, get out of the classroom and just walk around the city. But just say, I mean, you teach them history.
Yeah.
By the statue.
For better or for worse.
For better or for worse.
Yes,
that's when the British were in charge. This is what happened.
That's right.
So why would you if you tear that down, you're tearing down history.
Yes.
I think I'm very angry when I see that going on.
So just leave it and discuss it rather than wipe it out and it's gone. And now we don't know who the bad guys were.
Correct.
Is that the sort of feeling on it?
Yeah.
I was intrigued when you became Taoiseach first time round. It was COVID, wasn't it?
Yes.
And I always felt a bit of sympathy, not in a patronising way, but just as a punter. I felt, this was the moment that your family, I always felt for your family that day. This was meant to be the hug and, our dad made it or my husband made it or, my uncle, whatever. Did you feel, did that cross your mind or did you just say, look, I'm here? Were you very stoical about it?
I was stoical about it. Really,
okay.
Get on with
Wasn't
it.
Wasn't a big deal.
I think they were fine about it. I mean, look, it's needs must. It is it is,
I know. It's so grim. I don't even want to talk about it.
That's a great line in The Irishman, it is what it is, Jack.
It is what it is and you have to keep going. But you have a stoical streak, do you? Because I do,
but I'm also less, sometimes part of me is less maybe sensitive to those issues, if that makes sense. I'm not as worked up about it. Sometimes, like when you're getting elected as Taoiseach, I'm thinking of the speech I'm going to make. I'm thinking of the...
You're not worried about the bits around
the bits around it doesn't really... No, it was lovely this time. The family were there, albeit they had a day late.
It was a little delayed.
There was all sorts of activity going on. But that's a learning experience for them as well. That's how I look at that.
That's good. Everything's a learning, isn't it?
Everything's a learning, Don't get too worried about it or angry about it. It'll happen.
Okay.
And so on like that,
What was your house like books-wise for your children when they were like
great,
young? How did you manage the reading?
We just poured books in. The kids give out to me. Dad, do not buy books this Christmas, please,
Yeah, I know that feeling.
They're kind of saying, I'm pouring books upon them. I used to read books to them at night. I love doing that. In fact, I was just... there's a wonderful statue unveiled to the great Teddy McCarthy, the dual Cork hurler last weekend. And I was looking for John Horgan did a beautiful book on Teddy McCarthy, and I remember reading it all to Killian. Now, whether Killian wanted to hear it or not, I'm not quite clear as a young child, but I certainly wanted to read it out loud to him and take the opportunities, as you know.
It's
as
a
you
2 for 1 there.
Yeah, exactly. And so I read Paddy Clark to him.
Did you?
Killian got the best. He doesn't remember it, but he actually got the best of all the kids. Yeah. I read more to him than, say, to Micheál or Eva. I think I did a lot of Harry Potter. As well with Micheál a bit more. They loved Harry Potter.
Yeah.
And you were kind of in that world, in that era when they were growing up. So they were great readers, and to this day, Eva particularly is a fantastic reader.
It's great. It's a gift for life, isn't it?
It's a gift for life. It's a great thing. Yeah.
Your third book today is the book that we like to ask you, the book that brings you joy, the book that you like to read to make you, put you in good form or maybe distract you from the vagaries of life. Have you anything in your mind for that?
There are some books that are just great books. I mean, we mentioned Colin McCann.
Yeah.
My Uncle Buddy I mentioned earlier.
Yes.
Opened up the world of Brendan Behan to me because he the Borstal Boy. And I thought it was very funny at the time because Behan was very witty. And small things when you're young, you're just kind of saying the word bastard is spelled B-E-S-D-U-T. So he's kind of mimicking the English pronunciation
of it. Yes, yes.
You busted out.
Yeah.
It's very funny, And there's that kind of funny defiance in Behan. Do you know this kind
there
of?
Is, yeah.
And it's kind of half comical in a way. Like, what's this young guy? Is he really a revolutionary, or is he kind of half revolutionary? Is he kind of pub Republican who's got caught? I don't mean that in any.
No, I know what you're saying.
But there's all that wrapped up.
Yes, in all of that,
and all of that, and then life's learning.
Yeah.
The other book that I've read recently, which is really very enjoyable, is The Fight by Norman Mailer.
Oh, I've not read this, but tell us about this.
Man, you ask yourself the question: how can a guy write a book about 7 rounds of boxing? And it's about the famous fight of Ali versus George Foreman. I'm a complete Ali. I love Ali.
Are you big Ali?
Big Ali, man. I've read everything.
Have you?
And watched every documentary of Muhammad Ali.
Your dad's the boxer.
Yeah, and my father allowed us to stay up late at night to watch all the Ali Fraser fights. There was a moment in time, that period.
Yeah. The Rumble in the Jungle?
The Rumble in the Jungle is this one, right? And it's in Zaire, which is now Congo.
Mad.
And he takes us through the African psychology, how they react to these things. Yeah. How the guy in charge is using this as a great propaganda thing and all the rest of it, the purse. Then it's into sports psychology. Yeah. And, apparently in the hotel, and what's interesting, all the journalists, you'd get this, are all milling around the same hotel foyer every morning, you see. Yeah. And Foreman has their hands on the pocket. And apparently he's told to do this. Don't talk. No journalist can talk to him in the foyer. And he's kind of intimidator. He's just exudes, this guy's going to kill Ali. Yeah. Ali, meanwhile, is having a press conference every single day
in the lobby,
trying to convince the journalists I'm going to win this fight. No one believes it. Yeah. The fascinating bit at the end of the fight is Mailer and a colleague of his decide, and this is unreal. Like, Mailer runs with Ali the night before the fight, and Mailer is saying this guy isn't going to win. He's not in shape. He was puffing, all this kind of stuff. And but he gets into the dressing room. He goes out to the compound where Ali is, in the palace of the ruler. both fighters have their kind of compound there.
Yeah.
And he's kind of hoping to get a word with Ali before the fight. And then they shove him on the bus. And there's some great depictions of, Ali's aunt. She did all the cooking for Ali before the fight.
Really?
And she has her hair done up.
Wow.
Up in the kind of a bun or whatever. He does it beautifully.
Like a beehive almost, yeah.
And she's quite kind of gone off to the show, so to speak, kind of attitude. But he says he senses and smells fear on the bus of all Ali's entourage. That all of them are fearful.
They've got the yippies.
Really. But he said Ali doesn't. But anyway, they get into the dressing room and Ali suddenly erupts.
Yeah.
What are you all afraid of?
Yeah.
What are you all afraid? And they're all afraid. He's not. And Mailer says, to be honest with you, Mohammed, I'm afraid for you as well. He says, as long as you have confidence in your own ability and skill set, you'll be afraid of nobody. And it's just extraordinary.
He had to bring them with him nearly.
Yeah. And he goes in and then if you watch any of the broadcasts after footage, David Frost, I think, others are in there. And you see the release of Ali's emotions, I told you, I'm the greatest of all time. You ripped me off and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he's released.
It's epic. It's Shakespearean.
It's epic. And this is life, like.
Yeah.
I think this is life unfolding.
Yes.
And then, the whole... And I think the rope-a-dope, there was a bit of the rope-a-dope when he's on the ropes.
Yeah.
You see, the book tells us that Angelo Dundee loosens the ropes before the fight.
Wow.
Because everybody's obsessed with Foreman coming in and all that. And meanwhile... Ali's guy's loosening because he wants to get more slack in the rope.
Yeah, to bounce.
And if you look at that fight, I've watched it so many times. The punches are barely missing Ali. If any one of them lands, it's over. Foreman packed the punch.
Yeah.
And I've watched Foreman has often said afterwards, I keep saying, I was giving my best blows into the body of Ali, and Ali would say, is that all you got, George? Is that all you got, George? And I said,
imagine.
And Foreman is really losing it.
Yeah.
And Foreman never went kind of beyond 3 rounds. He always knocked people out very early.
It really made me want to read this book.
It's a great book.
Yeah, Norman Mailer. And again, it comes back once again to what you were saying earlier on. It's the detail, human detail around the big story.
The big story.
We know it's the punching, 2 guys punching each other for a living, but it's the stuff. It's the mother with the hair up and the food and the bus and it's great. But that's the detail that people love.
Yeah.
When were you face down on the canvas in your life most, do you think? When did you feel most defeated?
In life?
Yeah.
Well, we had terrible personal trauma in our lives when we lost Lena in particular, and we lost Rory earlier in 1999. But along with losing Lena back in 2010, we had the crash as well. And that was a very bleak period. And life, you weren't really, you had to kind of come through that. And you weren't, I have to be honest, whether one was doing it as rationally as one would like to think in hindsight is an open question.
I'm not going to press you on it, but I just will ask you about coming through. I spoke to a lovely woman from Galway this week in London. I'd interviewed her on the radio. And her husband had taken his own life at an older age. And she got through it. And she married again and she's happy. She still has lovely memories of her husband and so on. But the word resilience kept coming up in our conversation. We met for lunch in London, of all things, and we were talking about her story. And I was just fascinated to know, and I'd like to ask you about the recovery to come out of the darkness. What did you do? Was it faith? Was it Mary? Was it... that's a lot.
There's a number of factors. I think Mary,
strong woman,
the family, the wider family were fantastic.
Were they?
Oh yeah, very, very, very helpful. They were there. My brothers, sisters.
So important.
Mary's family were there. The wider community. I always said, Micheál was kind of 16. Micheál was just playing the football. I can remember 2 weeks after Lena's death, being out watching a football match. He had a brilliant game as a goalkeeper. That kind of began because people come up to and say, look, we're going to sort of suggest him to people and he's on the development squad. And that kind of getting out, literally engaging with life again, was crucial. And I think the young kids, I often say when Rory passed in 1999, Micheál was 4, Eva was 2. I had to get up every morning. We had to get up and get them breakfast. And they were the real source that pulled us through. And with Lena, it was having had an earlier traumatic hit, which you don't expect in life. I I think that all that kind of thing helped. And then I say to people who say, if I know someone who's gone through a period or they've lost someone, I say, look, get routine into your life. It sounds but it's very basic. Get out, walk, get back to nature. I found I did a lot of walking, and it's probably why I'm walking so much now. I haven't got off the walking.
But nature's so important.
So I could walk miles, and it gave me something.
Yeah.
And I'd walk the fields that I used to walk with Lena in West Cork. And I used to be telling stories to Lena when she was a child, and I tell the story about the bull threatening her older sister.
Yeah.
And the bull coming down the field, and Lena stood up to the bull. And Lena had every word of that off by heart when I used to tell it at night going to bed. I remember one night I left out, Lena looked at the bull, and you're half falling asleep when you're telling stories. And Lena said, ferociously, because I left out the word ferociously.
Wow. How old was she?
She was 7 at the time.
Isn't that extraordinary?
And when I walked through a certain field in West Cork, that's the field.
Yeah. You still go there?
All the time, yeah.
And she comes...
with me, yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
There, yeah.
That's beautiful. And it is lovely. Do you prefer people to leave you be on the subject of those two children of yours, your beautiful children, or do you prefer people to bring them up so that you can remember them?
I think ordinarily we have our way of grieving and mourning and paying tribute, and I think people are good at the moment. People are generally
giving
been very
space,
good.
Yeah.
That's the word.
I understand.
People give us space. Yeah, prefer.
It's funny because you were talking about a paragon earlier on. The two men whose daughters. That must have been. I mean, you must have connected.
There was a bit of that. There had to be.
Bit.
Yeah, but that's not why I got the book.
No, I understand that
because I didn't quite realise. I just love Colin McCann, so I got the book, and I'm fascinated with the Middle East for obvious reasons as well. But then midway through, and I did say to Basim, and we discussed this actually. I said, Colin McCann got your trauma, if you don't mind me saying so. Yeah. He articulates it because I could feel.
You could understand it.
What Rami was saying about the loss of his daughter and how it affected him later on. And it was incredibly sort of true to life. I mean, he's an extraordinary author.
He understood it.
Yeah.
When in not too long ago, we saw what happened to Zelensky in the Oval Office. And we saw what happened with Keir Starmer, who produced the King's imitation, the rabbit from the hat there. We saw Macron with his slightly more touche-filet, if you like, approach to it. And then you went to, I have to say, as an Irish person, I was kind of going, oh God, I hope he's all right in there because, it's a strange atmosphere and the world is a bit odd and America is so important to the Irish story and the Irish economy. And I was going... I was wondering at it, and again, back to the human and the colour level of it. There you are outside the Oval Office. You're waiting for the knock on the door to say, Taoiseach, the President will see you now. Bring us to the bit where you're outside the door waiting to go in. How were you?
I was good actually. I was looking forward to it.
All right, Muhammad Ali.
You're kind of. I don't know. There's advice coming in. I thought the thing was a bit overhyped in advance.
Yeah.
But be that as it may, it kind of had to be given everything that happened before. You have to have a clear, like every meeting I have, you have to have a clear set of objectives. You need to know what the end goal here.
So everyone was around you going, you don't forget, and you were getting all this advice, and in your head you were saying, did you try and block
the most
out
important
noise?
thing in the meetings like that is to develop a chemistry between yourself and the other person. To try and, in a short space of time, can you develop, which can then be a building block for later.
So then you went in and you sat down, you were as close as we are today to President Trump. And, I was saying, my analysis, if I may, was that, I said, you have the touchy-feely approach, you had the hairdryer approach that Zelensky or whatever. I felt you did the silent treatment, and I don't mean silent. I just felt you kind of went zen, as if to say, okay, can you take us through?
There's a bit of zen, but I mean, it is his parlour.
I know, but you're there. This could have gone pear-shaped.
Oh, could, of course, yeah. But you kind of have to navigate that piece.
How did you?
Well, I had clear sort of messages I wanted to get across, such as the Irish contribution in terms of investment in America and the Ryanair thing and all of that. And it's not all one-way street. I thought he was very deft and clever. Yeah. So he clearly got out, you guys stole our pharmaceutical, but he said it in the nicest possible way. You guys are smart. These guys are very smart. Yeah. They took all our pharmaceuticals, but it's all because of these stupid presidents that went before me. That kind of way, but message received, you guys have too much pharma, and this is a problem for America. But equally then we were able to kind of counter that. And he likes Ireland.
Yeah.
And that could be family, it could be When I say family, I think
he's got the golf course.
Yeah, the kid's nanny was Irish. It was Kevin.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and they have great time for her.
Okay, so there's
real respect. Yeah,
there's a bit of that.
And then his New York experience, he said to me, like a lot of his construction people were Irish.
Well, that's true.
Irish American. The majority of Irish Americans voted for him, is his take, and it probably did. The older age groups and so on like that.
Things have changed there.
So there was this sense like here, and look, let's be honest, the context is different to President Zelensky's in the sense that
of course,
this is Irish America. It's a good day. He has about 600 people invited who are connected and so on like that. And, I was conscious of all that. So if you play this reasonably clever, have your core goals, which are economic and in terms of maintaining the relationship so that you can engage. You see, a lot of this is about opening doors for others as well. And once you keep it's an important relationship so that when other ministers want to meet their counterparts, it happens. And so this is not just the one meeting. Yeah. It's also a signal to industry. It's a signal to wider people. And the industry people liked it because they say, look, the doors are open here and notwithstanding all the challenges and it's going to be difficult, et cetera, we have access.
Okay, we're coming to the end of our conversation, Taoiseach, and I have one more question. This is not a political... Anyone who says one comment to me on Instagram and says, why didn't you ask him about housing and anything else in the whole world? That's for a different show. So you can tune into Prime Time and you can tune into Morning Ireland or whatever for that interview. So that's why we're talking books with a little bit of colour about life in the universe. So that's what it is. If that's okay, that's we do this with every guest. Fine. So that's the deal. I will ask you one thing though about if everyone's on your back about those big issues that feel intractable, if you want to call it that, and there's a lot of negativity towards public service, because you're the Taoiseach, you're the chief. That's the word means. And do you feel sometimes I wish I could get this right, or do you feel there's more to do? Well, not done more to do, but do you feel frustrated by the system, the whole thing?
Absolutely, yeah. And in many ways, I'm Taoiseach today because of unfinished business. There is a bit that in me, we spoke earlier about the resilience thing, and I think that comes from the father because of his experiences in life. I've often reflected on that more recently, given everything that has happened, how you're still here kind of thing. Yeah. And I think the father must have had that zest to, given the circumstances that they came out of. So to me, that the housing issue is one and disability is the other. Yeah. I was very frustrated with disability on the last occasion. And I'm absolutely determined on the issue of disability, for example, that we make a definitive breakthrough and new departure on disability at all levels and in every department.
You're determined on that.
And housing likewise. And there has to be, and there is this frustration growing in terms of the big one word. I met Secretary Generals recently. I said one word: delivery is the problem in Ireland. We're not delivering fast enough. We have too many checks and balances, actually. And people look at the leaders and say, we elected you to do things. And we say, well, the regulator won't allow you to do that. And the regulator is telling the ESB must do this, and it's telling Irish Water can only do that. But we elected you guys. Yeah. And that's where I think a problem. And I met Keir Starmer recently and we had a pint. Good. And we both agreed that modern governments, with all the systems we've created and agencies and regulators, we managed to tie both hands
yourselves up in knots. Back. Yeah, the two of you.
And he's instanced a story where some of his advisors said to him, in the energy field, Prime Minister, the way it is now, it'll take 11 years from concept to get a wind farm built. An offshore wind farm. So
that tells its own tale. So you need to try and break through all that.
That's the problem in modern liberal democracies. And it's why kind of President Trump and why sort of alternative sort of positions are being given greater credence, because there is a legitimacy to saying government has an entitlement to get things done for the greater good. So,
okay, so that's in the mix.
That is frustrating.
Our final question is if you could give us the name of the autobiography you haven't written yet, and what title would you put on that? In other words, this is your life in a book title, really. Have you any thoughts on that you might be able to share?
You suggested one, resilience, but
resilience.
I phoned a friend about this one.
Did you?
I know, but someone said Taoiseach Graw, many cups of tea in my political life. Lots of shocks. Yeah, I love the job.
So it's tea, shock, Graw.
Yeah, that's it.
That's pretty good. Okay, well, let's go for that for now. And see. Well, but I look forward to reading your novel, which you will write in retirement.
Thank you. Okay, I'll set that as
that's your homework. You've been given enough.
It's on the bucket list. Yeah,
it's on the bucket list. You could write it in the Rs if you were to ever sit there as president?
I don't think you could, Ryan. No,
you could, of course. It's just in between.
In any event, I will not be running for the Oris, just for clarity, in case anyone picks up this conversation. No, but I have a life to lead. Like,
I know. I appreciate that. No, that's okay. Well, I mean,
notwithstanding that I'm 45. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course, that's what you're feeling. Yeah. It's been really good to see you, and in such good form. And I appreciate you and your team for giving us your time. I know you're a busy person, and I wish you and your family every happiness. I mean that sincerely. And thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much, Ryan, and the very best of luck to you, and congratulations on all your work today.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Take care.
And there you have it, another packed episode with some great book recommendations for you to enjoy, all brought to you by Eason, Ireland's favourite bookseller. So shop in your local Eason store or explore hundreds of thousands of titles online at easons.com. Order before 6 p.m. for same-day dispatch and enjoy free delivery when you spend over a tenner. Eason, be inspired.